Well, welcome everyone. I'm Wes Rades. I'm Bay Nature's Executive Director, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you all this afternoon to Bay Nature's 13th Annual Local Hero Awards. Welcome everyone. We're really thrilled this afternoon to share with you too that today's afternoon, some of these empty seats will fill in. Today's afternoon is completely sold out. So thank you for your support. Thank you for coming out. And thank you for making this truly the hottest ticket in downtown Berkeley this afternoon. I'm really particularly relieved this afternoon too that my mask this afternoon has been relegated to pocket square status. That feels terrific. So in addition to honoring a set of remarkable local environmental leaders this afternoon, today is a celebration of Bay Nature and this shared culture of environmental stewardship that we're building together. Over the course of the afternoon, we're going to talk a lot about what Bay Nature is, what we hope to become, and why this shared community that we're all a part of is so essential to our success. For 23 years, Bay Nature has worked to connect all people of the Bay Area to their natural world through a quarterly magazine that's published print and online, along with hikes, talks, and events just like this that are intended to more deeply connect us to nature and to each other. Through deeply researched journalism, stunning photography, beautiful artwork, we urge our communities to venture outdoors with awe and appreciation, to engage with what they see very deeply, and to act together on behalf of the places we seek to protect for generations to come. A day like this can't happen, doesn't happen, without contributions from many people, which I'd like to recognize before we go any further this afternoon. First, I want to thank our lead sponsors. They are the Federated Indians of Great and Rancheria, Google, Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, Save the Redwoods League, Sonoma County Water Agency, Trust for Public Land, and Union Bank, now US Bank. I hope you'll give them a round of applause. We also owe a debt of thanks to Nancy and Bart Westcott, Barbara Bessie, and Jorgen Hildebrand. Thank you to them as well. And thank you to all of our sponsors. Indeed, there are 40 of them this year, without whom we couldn't produce this event. We hope that you enjoy this community assembled here today. Like I mentioned, it's great to hear you all connecting and talking before the show, connecting with friends new and old. As I've gotten to know this community, I see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of new faces, and I hope that you'll stop by and say hello during the reception that we'll have upstairs after the program. I'd like to highlight a few people in particular for you. First, Bay Nature's incredible board, whose dedication, enthusiasm, and collaborative spirit leave me inspired every time that we meet. So would Bay Nature's board members please raise your hands? Thank you all for being here. Next, of course, Bay Nature's talented staff. You know them as journalists, writers, editors, fundraisers, marketers, and operational wizards. I know them as the creative, curious, hilarious, relentlessly optimistic people that I look forward to seeing every morning. So would Bay Nature staff members please raise your hands? Hope you enjoy connecting with them today. I'm particularly thrilled to share that we have Bay Nature's co-founder, David Loeb, here with us today, and we expect Malcolm Margolin as well. David, where are you? David, wonderful to see you. And I also very gently get to embarrass both our former board president, Bruce Hartsoe, and my immediate predecessor, Regina Starr Ridley, who both so warmly welcomed me last fall. And of course, my final appreciation is for all of you, Bay Nature's readers and supporters. I joined this conservation community in November last fall from a nonprofit in Oakland that looked after the city's parks and outdoor recreation programs. Thank you for sharing with me your connections with the outdoors and your reasons for keeping Bay Nature among the organizations that you care about in these first few months. I've really appreciated that. As we start this program celebrating conservation and environmental stewardship, I'd like to honor the Bay Area's many diverse indigenous peoples who've cared for the lands around us for thousands of years and who continue to thrive and live here. We respect your indigenous sovereignty, strive for right relations, and thank you for the example that you show us. In closing, today indeed is a special day. I hope that our honorees sitting here in the front row, that's Alexii Sigona, Blanca Hernandez, Omar Gallardo, and Stu Weiss, and this gathering of our Bay Area environmental community leaves you feeling inspired, ready to continue building the better world that we know can exist around the next bend in the trail if we all walk that path together. Now it's my pleasure to kick off this year's Local Hero Awards by introducing you to Bay Nature's Editor-in-Chief, Victoria Schlesinger. Thank you all for being here today.
We got a lot up here. There we go. All right. Hi, I'm Victoria Schlesinger. I'm the editor of Bay Nature magazine. Right here. If you want to pick up a copy, we have some out there today. So how many people here are aware of the bell tower, the Campanile, just across the street on UC Berkeley campus? Raise your hand. Okay, a lot of people. Excellent. For those of you who don't know, there is a bell tower across the street that has 61 carillon bells in it that musicians play sometimes 3 times a day. And in fact, every Sunday at 2 o'clock, they play a beautiful set. And so they may be playing right now. And on UC Berkeley campus, you hear those bells wherever you are. And if you live in the surrounding neighborhoods, which I happen to, you hear those bells wherever you are. And in fact, for miles around, you hear those bells. And it is a shared experience that brings together the people of this area, those songs. Despite our differences, we are bonded by those bells. And that is what Bay Nature aspires to be. It aspires to be a magazine that is a bell tower, that is bringing the community together who cares about the natural world in the Bay Area. Come on in. Every piece of writing, piece of art, photography in this magazine is a bell tower song that is trying to bring this community together, to get to know each other, to support each other. And that is what we are doing here today. We are ringing joyously, loudly, the carillon bells today for 4 people whose lives are devoted towards supporting the natural world in the Bay Area. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Valentin Lopez, the chairman of the Amamutsan Tribal Band.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Wes, thank you for today. And I'd like to thank all the people here today for showing up. I want to thank the board, the staff of Bay Nature. You guys do wonderful work, and we really appreciate it. As it was stated, I'm the chairman of the Amamutsan Tribal Band, and our tribe is comprised of the descendants that were taken to Mission San Juan Bautista and Santa Cruz. When I was first elected chair, I attended a conference. And at that conference, there was a gentleman from one of the large tribes. And it was his job to recruit students from their reservation and try to get them placed at Stanford, Berkeley, Harvard, and all the great institutions of the United States. And he did that for 23 years. And then he told me that after 23 years, he looked around his reservation, and it was just a tremendous brain drain. He says, because the people that left never came back. They never contributed to the tribe. And to me, that was just so darn sad to think about. And this was early. I was elected chair in 2003, so this is about 2005. And since that time, I started talking to our youth. I started letting them know that, we want to get the education, but at the same time realize how important it is, your obligation to the tribe, and how important it is to you return to the tribe to work with the tribe. And we talked to a lot of youth. And I'm really happy to say that today, the people that go to college from our tribe we have a good number of members who go. Currently, we have 3 of our our youth, in PhD programs. We have one majoring in psychology at the University of Michigan. We have another one at UCLA majoring in Native American Studies. And we have Alexii, Environmental Science and Policy. And that is just tremendous. At the end of the year, in about December of last year, I announced that I'm going to be retiring. I'll still work with the tribe, but not so darn busy as I am now. We have good leadership for the future. A lot of times at these honoring, we recognize past accomplishments. But for us, this is just beginning. This is just beginning. So, Alexii, he does a lot for our tribe now. We call on him daily almost to help us, and he always says yes. I'm really kind of worried that we're asking too much of him, and he may not finish his dissertation. But I make sure to let him know that's definitely his priority. So I'll let you hear from Alexii now. We're very proud of him. He has a lot of wisdom, and he's learned a lot. Thank you.
That was such a heartwarming introduction. I really appreciate it. Chairman, Victoria, Weiss, thank you for everyone at Bay Nature for holding this event, holding this space here on the ancestral homelands of the Chochenyo Ohlone-speaking peoples. And I never knew I'd have a photo done of myself, and it feels like I'm sort of some person, I don't know. I feel like proud of it, and I'm really grateful for all of this work. So, I just have a couple remarks for y'all. Keep it light and move into something. And, I think I'm coming to you today as someone who's really humbled and grateful to be honored as a hero, but I also wouldn't be here without my family. So I want to recognize my family members here today, my brother Nico, my partner Raven, my father Robbie, my mother Linnell, her partner Federico, Chairman Lopez, and also my grandfather Art. Thank you for being here today. And why I talk about family is because I don't disconnect family from the environment. I attribute some of my first experiences connecting with the environment to my grandpa Art, who used to take me fishing when I was young, all along the coastline between Pacifica to Carmel. And this was never something attributed to our identity, even though we are, descendants of people who fished along these coasts for millennia, but just as a way of providing sustenance for the family, to do something that feels good. And, I want to acknowledge also the folks whose efforts to keep the San Francisco and Monterey Bay areas protected from development ventures have allowed Gen Z folk like myself to connect with non-human relatives and go fishing along this coastline. These fights to protect important places in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and so on, they've been so helpful, and they're also ongoing. Many of you are aware of our Protect Eurostock fight to protect a sand and gravel mine from happening on a sacred dance ground for our peoples in South Santa Clara County. This campaign has strong involvement of Amamutsun youth, and I think what's really great about it is it's not only about the interests in endangered species habitat and recreation for the public, but it's also about indigenous spirituality and social justice. And I really think that's where the environmental movement is going, and that's so important. For our Amamutsun youth, we helped organize the Amamutsun Youth Walk in 2020, as well as recent rallies. We helped with art builds and speaking events. And this is great opportunities for younger tribal members to learn about and advocate for themselves and for Mother Earth. And it's so powerful to see young ones doing that work. Also, I want to give a special thanks here to Green Foothills, who have been really involved in this organization and the Protect Your Stock campaign, and for Megan Fluke for nominating me for this award. And I've been supported by many other communities in so many different ways, from university advisors to Amamutsun Native stewards who I've learned, the folks that are doing the good work on the ground of land stewardship. Those ones, those people you can learn the most valuable lessons from, rather than people like myself reading books all day at UC Berkeley. And then also the wider acknowledgement of California Native peoples as important environmental stewards has only come about recently, due in large part to texts such as Tending the Wild by M. Cat Anderson, or California Indians and Their Environment by Otis Parrish and Dr. Kent Lightfoot, who's here today. But California Native activists and earth stewards have been around for many generations, despite not having wider recognition or support of their efforts from the environmental community. Indigenous leaders advocating for their people's ability to continue subsistence harvesting and ceremonial practices were markedly different from past environmental advocacy efforts pushing for that hands-off preservation model of the natural world. Today, that is changing, hence why I'm standing in front of you all today. Along the lines of what counts as environmental stewardship, I also want to highlight the ongoing work of California Native leaders such as Chairman Lopez to get UC Berkeley to rematriate our ancestors and return them to the ground. Since, as many of you know, UC Berkeley still holds thousands of Native American ancestral remains. It's unfortunate that California Native leaders have to spend so much time advocating for basic human rights, such as protection of sacred sites, or the ability to even bury our ancestors again. And for Native people, this is very much a part of environmental stewardship. But this work also limits our ability to be leaders in initiatives such as Pathways to 30 by 30 here in California. But you cannot separate human rights from environmental stewardship for Native people. And just to conclude, I want to reflect on what I think it means to do away with the harmful tropes of the ecological Indian who is one with nature. I believe that this way of othering indigenous peoples that we've seen in the past with Iron Eyes Cody and things like that in the 70s and the 80s creates a conceptual divide between how Native and non-Native people interact with the world. In other words, if we think of Native peoples as being constrained to one time period, it limits opportunity for tribal members today to have connection to identity and seeing themselves in that, and also limits the opportunities for non-Indigenous peoples to learn lessons from Indigenous cultures and understand them as being applicable to our world today. At the personal level, it's important for all of us to examine deep-seated assumptions and social constructs embedded in colonial, capitalist, and white supremacy logics. As a mixed-race person who is only connected to Amamutsun culture as an adult, I'm still very much working on this as well. I believe this process of reframing how we relate to the world around us to center reciprocal relationships with place can allow for a greater understanding of interdependence with our natural world and foster a greater sense of stewardship. And in conversations with Amamutsun stewards, their ethic of why they keep going out to work every day is because they have those relationships with place. And I think many of us hold that ethic as well. So, for instance, we can progress from simply seeing our wonderful protected areas around the bay as places of recreation to places where we can connect with non-human relatives and create interdependent relations. These places, which may only be seen as having recreational importance, are often of particular cultural significance to local Native peoples. I know that every one of us here is fueled by experiences or interests in protecting our natural world, and I'm honored to be in solidarity with you all. I hope we can all continue doing this important work of decolonizing conservation, and this starts at the personal level. This starts with standing in solidarity with Indigenous peoples, advocating for their basic human rights, and doing the needed internal work to dismantle structures deeply ingrained in our society that continue to harm our environment and our ability to connect with it. Tum Sanakanis, thank you all for your time.
Hello, everyone. It's lovely to see you all here. I'm Guanani Gomez-Van-Courtright, editorial fellow at Bay Nature, and I will be introducing Blanca Hernandez. Blanca is an environmental educator and director of programs and partnerships at Yes to Nature and Neighborhoods, which is a nonprofit in Richmond where she leads opportunities for youth and family to connect with the outdoors, reclaim connections with the natural world. And so, without further ado, on behalf of Bay Nature, I'd like to present the 2023 Environmental Education Award to Blanca Hernandez.
Been a long journey. I'm going to tell you about it. I think I need a clicker. Escucha la naturaleza. Para no lastimar sus sentimientos. Let me see. Listen to nature so you don't hurt their feelings. That's what my father told me as a child when he was teaching me how to prune a tree. It was one of the few trees that we had on our property in the high desert in Mexico. He said, if you trim off too much, it'll think you're trying to harm it, and it'll be sad. But if you listen to it, you can hear for where it needs your support, and you can help it become strong. And it was poetic, puzzling things that my parents shared with me as a young child that really strengthened my connection to the outdoors and life all around us. Now, my parents had 3 daughters, and they had this dream that we would become economically self-sufficient. But life in the high desert, when there's very little water or access to education, was very difficult. So one day, like many immigrant families, we rolled the dice, played with our lives, and made our journey to this country in search for a better life. And luckily, our journey was protected. And when we arrived here safely, we focused on our goals, which was to get an education and a college degree. And my parents joined in the fun too. They went to night school to learn to speak, write, and read English right alongside us. Luckily, there was this organization called Migrant Ed, and my sister enrolled in that program, and that's how we met Mr. Olmo, who was like a guardian angel sent our way, who guided my sister into college, and then I followed in her footsteps. And wow, we ended up going to the University of San Diego. Yeah. I would go to summer camp as an engineer or for engineering in high school. I love math, I love physics, I love Richard Feynman. I do. And so I was quick to declare as an engineer when I entered, and I hung in there for a little bit, but then I met this guy. His name's Dr. Thurbert, and he was the chair of the English department. I didn't know this until I Googled this picture, but apparently he had also been an engineering major and then switched to an English degree major. So I just found that out and touched my heart because he practically was one of the first teachers that actually took the time to get to know me, listen to me, and kidnap me from the engineering department. And that's how I graduated with liberal arts degree. I really thought about continuing my education, getting a master's, but by then, my sister Maya had already moved to the Bay Area, and my younger sister, Daya, was going to San Francisco State. So the Bay was already pulling me. I was already going to be here with you all today. And that's why I'm here. However, when I got here, I was stumbling through a couple jobs. I didn't really know where I was going to fit, and I started working in the Richmond schools. And I tell you, that was a very depleting environment because some of these schools are so under-resourced, and some of the teachers, unfortunately, were dimming young people's minds rather than letting them shine. I know that there are some amazing teachers. One of them is here, Meryl. I love you. Thank you for doing the work that you do in the Richmond schools. In being in that environment, I really was enraged. That's that Quetzalcoatl being mad. Suddenly, because I'd been so focused on that college degree, I'd had these horse blinders. So when I was suddenly in the school district, I was witnessing, and I was having my own personal trauma come up from systemic racism as an immigrant, as a woman of color, trying to get to my one goal. But because I could relate to folks in this community, I would often go, and because I grew up with such a strong connection to nature, I would often go camping with friends. Some of them are here. Thank you all for camping with me and allowing me to have, one day I had this vision of having the people that I worked with come camping with me because, shoot, if I'm having this healing experience and I know what they're going through, surely they could use this type of healing as well. And it so happened that this little organization called Yes was starting to form. They had just hired Eric, Yes's executive director, my brother from another mother. And they were looking for a second in command, and I applied. And I walked into that interview. I shook all of those panelists' hands, and I said, I've been looking for you. I got the job. So once I was on board, the first thing I did was I picked up the phone and I called all of the people that our programs were engaging, and I asked them, what are the impacts that our programs are having in your lives? And I also asked them, how can the organization support you? And that's really how we started growing our organization. And 15 years later, I am so proud of the work that we've been able to do alongside the community. And I really want to ask former Yes staff and current Yes staff to please stand up. I just really want to share this moment with you. Kelsey, Zaida, Eric. Thank you. Thank you for contributing to the Yes legacy and making it part of your lives too. Our work is so powerful and it doesn't get done alone. I mean, we really rely on volunteers. There's some here as well. Partners, also see you here as well. Yes's leadership in nature-based programming is a blanket of love that wraps around individuals who have historically been excluded from the outdoors and from leadership opportunities. We engage youth, adults, and families in environmental education, health and wellness, and the joy of the outdoors. We also educate on the histories and the policies that create inequities, and we nurture their leadership and inspire them to engage and advocate for our community and our environment. We know that regardless of the differences in our cultures, many of our ancestors based many of their practices by observing and listening to the natural world. And throughout history, some of us have been forcibly removed from this connection. And our work is about reclaiming that connection to the earth and embracing the power of nature to heal, inspire awe, and develop empowered and compassionate leaders. Now, you all know the latest climate report is pretty grim. And although our planet will restore itself, we will lose on the diversity of species, and we will ultimately be the ones to suffer from our current choices as a society. But as a woman who is a descendant of warriors, through my work, I will continue to develop leaders that advocate for our planet because every starfish matters. We need to stop indigenous erasure. Black lives matter. Así que escucha la naturaleza para no lastimar sus sentimientos. So listen to nature so you don't hurt their feelings. Thank you.
Wow. How about Alexii and Blanca? All right. Well, as an executive director, a lot of times your job comes down to two things: asking people for help and saying thank you. Earlier this afternoon, I was able to thank all of the people who were instrumental in making a day like today possible. And now it's my great honor to ask all of you for help in building a stronger Bay Nature for tomorrow. So I don't think it's any surprise to anybody. Publishing is a brutal business. I think David would tell you it was not an easy business when Bay Nature started, and it hasn't improved. The fact of the matter is that today, more than half of Bay Nature's revenue comes from contributed donations from folks like yourselves. So anything that you're able to donate this afternoon to support Bay Nature truly is essential to the organization. Now, it's a fair question to ask when you give to Bay Nature, what is it exactly that you're giving to? What are you supporting? And at the end of the day, it's people and it's community. You're supporting writers, you're supporting photographers, you're supporting designers, you're supporting local hero award producers, you are supporting hike leaders, talk leaders. You're supporting the people who produce all the things that you love about Bay Nature and what brings you out here today. So the way this is going to work this afternoon, I'm going to set a big goal. I am hopeful this afternoon that we can raise $20,000 together for Bay Nature. If we raise $25,000 for Bay Nature this afternoon, everybody here gets a second drink up at the bar this afternoon. It's on me. It's on me. So that's a big number. But when you break it down, we've got about 175 people here this afternoon. That's only about $150 a person. So if we're all willing to sign up for that right now, we can move right along. We'll be in great shape. You should have a program with you. And so the way this works, you each have a number on the back of your program. You can warm it up by waving around. I assure you that can do no harm. We've got members of our staff here who are going to be watching in the audience, and so we're going to have multiple opportunities to donate this afternoon, all the way from $1,000 to $500 to $250 to $100 to $50. And so when you are so moved as you're willing and able, all you have to do is just show your paddle. One of the members of our team will collect that information, and with deep gratitude, we will accept that gift. As you're sitting out there thinking about whether you might be one of our bigger donors this afternoon, whether you think you might be one of our $1,000 donors or $500 donors, first of all, I'd encourage that behavior. But second of all, it's an act of great service, and I would encourage you that actually it carries double the weight. The first is if you can be one of our leaders this afternoon, you set a great example for the other members in our community. We regularly reference our major donors as we go out and seek additional funding. And so if you're able to support us today at a leadership level, we'll be able to go out and multiply that impact over the course of the rest of the year. The second is I know there are many people in the auditorium this afternoon who would love to support Bay Nature to a greater extent, but at the moment aren't willing or able. That's completely understandable. And so if you're able to give at a higher amount, you lift those people with you. A $1,000 gift is essentially equal 20 $50 gifts. And so your impact, if you're able in a place today to support us at that level, helps 20 other people in the room here with us. So before all that, though, we'll take the temperature down for a second. I want to tell you a quick story. And the story I want to tell you is the story that's been quite meaningful to me. It's what brings me to this work, which in large part is what brings me to this room today. And it's the story of a park in downtown Oakland. So I moved with my family to downtown Oakland in 2014, about 9 years ago. We moved to Old Oakland, not far from City Hall, near Lafayette Square Park. Lafayette Square Park, if you don't know it, is one of Oakland's original city squares. It's on the original city plan from that era. It was redesigned by the landscape architect Walter Hood, whose work you might be familiar with, in 1998. And by the time my family arrived in 2014, through budget cuts and lack of attention, it had fallen into a complete state of disrepair. So with the help of my neighbors and with the help of a lot of parents in the neighborhood, we got to work cleaning up that park. And so here we are at work. We called ourselves, incidentally, the Old Oakland Parent Society. That is, oops, if you spell it all out. We held cleanups in the park. We held barbecues in the park. We prepared meals for the unhoused folks living in the park, and slowly but surely we brought this space back to life over a period of time. If there's one moment in this experience that turned it from a project into a mission, it was during those summer evenings, you know, when the sun doesn't set until 8 o'clock at night, and you hear the laughter of children, where all of a sudden there was no laughter before. And I tell you, that was a magical feeling that kept us moving forward as we faced roadblocks. One of our major roadblocks in this park was the playground. If you're a parent, you know that aside from a play structure, past perhaps bathrooms and swings, the playground is probably the place where you go to first. And this playground had completely fallen apart. Now, we were amateurs, so we thought to ourselves, a broken, bad playground, well, we'll repaint it. And so for a period of time, Lafayette Square Park had the most beautiful, broken playground in all of downtown Oakland. It shouldn't be a surprise, no one was playing on this playground. And so we looked at ourselves, and we could have either given up or we could have continued pressing on. And we decided to press on. And we became, in essence, amateur park planners. Because when we called the city, when we looked for help, the parts to repair this playground weren't being manufactured anymore. And so we set to work. We didn't know anything about grant writing. We wrote a grant, and we received a $50,000 grant from Sunlight Giving down on the peninsula to repair the playground. We educated ourselves on ADA requirements, gate widths, the depth of that little rubberized play surface that has to go under every playground that's built these days. And slowly but surely, we figured it out, such that after 4 years of work, fumbling through the darkness, not knowing entirely what we were doing, 4 years after that, we had a new playground. And so on the corner of 10th and Washington in downtown Oakland, there's still a playground that a small and determined group of neighbors, we didn't know each other beforehand, of neighbors built in downtown Oakland. So what does all this have to do with conservation? What does this have to do with environmental work? Why is this bringing me here today? And it's really three things. The first is that this experience taught me a lot about the intersectionality of the issues that we're working on. How, on the one hand, to advocate for green spaces and also for the homeless. How to advocate for public transportation and also advocate not to have buses parked and idling around a park for children in a downtown environment 24 hours a day. How to advocate both for people as well as for places, which I see nodding heads. That's something that's very common in our work. The second is to really understand problem solving. How does this actually happen? This park, this playground is the reason why I got into rooms with city council members. It's the reason why I started my first letter writing campaign. It's the reason why I stood on street corners with a clipboard collecting signatures. It's the reason why I've actually passed a piece of legislation in Oakland, if you can believe that. It helped me understand how not only to stop the bad from happening, but also to help the good to happen. And that's something I know that a lot of us are familiar with. And then last but not least, this was my first spark of community leadership. Unelected, unappointed, but trusted by my neighbors to try to make change for the better of our neighborhood. Take my own personal desire to change the world and find some small corner of that world where I felt like I could make a positive impact and make change. And that's something that I know a lot of you know a lot about. And that spark of community leadership over the last several months as I've gotten to know this community is what I see in all of you. And that spark has taken us to some pretty interesting places. That spark took me to the Oakland Parks and Recreation Foundation, which is where I raised money and managed programs through the course of the pandemic. It's what brings me here to Bay Nature to work with all of you. As I've gotten to know all of you, that spark has caused you to donate to environmental causes that you treasure. It's caused you to volunteer for organizations that you believe in. It's caused you to lead those organizations and rally other members of your community to your causes. Some of you I know are policymakers. Some of you I know work in government within the agencies that actually manage our lands. Some of you even manage incredible land trusts that look after thousands of acres of land that we're seeking to protect for the generations to come. So before we go any further, I just want to pause for a moment and recognize all of you and thank you for your leadership. And I hope that you'll give yourselves a round of applause for the work that all of you are doing each and every day. So thank you very much. So during the course of the afternoon, we're going to talk about what that leadership means and what it gets us. So leadership for us this afternoon starts with an opportunity to give at the $1,000 level. So Bay Nature's leadership within this conservation community, as we've seen, is intimately tied with your own leadership. We tell your stories, we spark your curiosity, and we inspire ourselves collectively to action. So together, we can connect all of the people in this natural world that we care so much about more deeply to it and among ourselves to each others. So when we talk about leadership within our own community, we really can't ask for more than Jorgen Hildebrand. Many of you know Jorgen. Jorgen is in his 90s. Until recently, he's been an avid hiker. If you offered me that deal, I would take it today. And unfortunately, he has some minor health issues that prevent him from being here this afternoon, but he has sent his good wishes and a challenge. So he has sent us today to start our fundraising off with a $5,000 gift and a challenge to all of us to match him. And so what I'm going to start this afternoon to do is ask who here among us can help match Jorgen and join Bay Nature with a $1,000 gift. So I'm going to pause for a moment. Everyone can think. I would love for you to join us. And if you're able now to join Jorgen, to match Jorgen in his $5,000 gift with $1,000 of your own, please raise your paddles and it'll be gratefully accepted. Unbelievable. Thank you. We have 50 and 123, 105, 75, 41, 65, and 29. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. We are grateful for your support. So I was super calm before that. Oh, in the middle, the two here? Yeah, 65 and 41. Oh, and 75 in the back? 75 in the back. Thank you all. I have to tell you, before I said that, I was super calm, and then my heart started beating out of my chest. That was incredible. All right, so I have to collect myself for a second. What does that leadership that you just saw here allow us to do as Bay Nature? So that leadership allows Bay Nature to be generous, generous, generous. You may be aware that everything that Bay Nature has published for the past 23 years is available for free online. Everything. It's all there. There's no paywall. There's nothing stopping anybody from accessing that information. So why is that important? It's incredibly important because you all have told me that one of the most important things to you is sharing your passion for the outdoors with others. So that means that when you forward one of our articles to a friend or a reluctant grandchild, they are able to read it for free. When you forward that article on your internal company Slack channel to one of your colleagues, they're able to click on that link and read the article for free. When you reference one of Bay Nature's articles in your grant applications, the person reading your grant application can read that article for free. So every time, one of the biggest ways that people get to our website, 500,000 people a year from Google searches, when they visit our website from Google, they're able to read those articles for free. We help you share your passion. So our next opportunity this afternoon to support Bay Nature is at the $500 level. So the $500 level is something that we call at Bay Nature the Publisher's Circle. So in addition to being recognized in every one of our magazines as a Publisher's Circle member, you receive the first notice for our hikes and talks, both of which have been terrific successes earlier this year. And you have the knowledge that you form the financial backbone of this organization. Publisher's Circle members in total represent 30% of our income over the course of the year, and you can be part of that group. One thing that I'm really excited to share is that the three editors in the room today, Regina, David, and myself, we're all members of the Publisher's Circle. So we have our skin in the game with you as well at this level. So the three of us would like to invite you to join us in the Publisher's Circle with a gift of $500 this afternoon. So who in this room can join Regina, David, and I as Publisher's Circle members for the next year at the $500 level? Unbelievable. Thank you very much. 60 and 12, 90, 117, 51, 87, 120. Wow. Thank you, you guys. That was great too. Alrighty, so the next opportunity we have is at the $250 level. Now at the $250 level, your leadership here, what we want to emphasize is that you help Bay Nature be incredibly brave. So you might know that by raising so much money from individuals, it allows us to remain an independent media organization. We're not beholden to any agenda or organization, and it allows us, as Victoria showed in our most recent issue, to sit in the center of very complicated conservation issues, like the article featured in our most recent issue highlighting whales and crabs and understanding the relationship between those two ecosystems without favor. Increasingly, bravery also means that we're able to bravely support our conservation values, which we know that we share with many of you. We see your organizations out there right now fighting for diversity, equity, and inclusion, fighting to make certain that everybody out in the community has equitable access to these lands, and that solutions to climate change aren't simply reinforcing existing harms. For Bay Nature, the case for diversity, equity, and inclusion is really straightforward. It's a no-brainer. By making sure that we have diverse perspectives and experiences represented in our pages, it makes our storytelling stronger. 2022 was an incredible milestone for Bay Nature in this regard. I'm not sure that you're aware, but in 2022, more than 50% of Bay Nature's online bylines were written by writers of color. That's a first for this organization, and we're seeking to continue that into 2023. On this front, we want to make certain that we're particularly thankful to our partners at the Schmidt Family Foundation. Joe, I think I saw you here. There he is. Thank you. And we're looking to continue this work together moving forward. So the question to all of you in this moment is, can you help keep Bay Nature brave? We have a very special opportunity for $250 donors. We listed earlier all the different ways that your support makes Bay Nature possible. And so if we can have 10 donors at the $250 level, we're going to recognize you in the next issue of Bay Nature, our summer issue, as having underwritten one of the stories in that issue. It's a complicated challenge. We're not quite certain how we're going to list 10 names under a story, but we have a fantastic designer who is going to make it work if you can join us at the $250 level. So I'm going to ask you all now, who can join us as a $250 donor this afternoon and help us underwrite a story in the next issue of Bay Nature? Fantastic. Wow, we're going to have to pause for a minute. There are a lot of paddles up. Thank you all. I see 43 and 6 and 23 and 137 all the way in the back. I see a handwritten 173. That is unbelievable. Thank you. 24 and 19 here. We will make it work. We will make it work. Alrighty, we are almost done, and you guys have been more than I could have hoped for. I'm having trouble in the moment. So we have two last opportunities. We have a $100 opportunity, and we have a $50 opportunity, and we'll move through them really quickly. So the last thing that your leadership allows us to do as Bay Nature is to think really boldly about the future, to think about what's next for this organization, both as a member of this conservation community as well as an independent media organization. We're sitting on the precipice of two big things. We're sitting on the precipice of the Inflation Reduction Act and all of that money pouring into our communities and our organizations and the problem solving that that is going to require of all of us. And we sit here as an independent media organization on the dealing with all the things in media and trying to figure out our path forward to continue serving you as readers and supporters. So how can we deepen our connections and our relationships, and how does Bay Nature continue to evolve? We're working on it. And so what I can tell you at the moment is that we're going to make darn certain that we listen deeply to all of you as part of that process. I'd like to invite you and make you aware that later this spring you're going to receive a survey from us, understanding how and why you come to Bay Nature and what we can do to better support you. And we would be thrilled if you would fill out that survey and tell us what is on your hearts and minds at this moment. We're going to panel focus groups. We would love to speak with you in a group setting, and we'll be speaking with many of you on a one-on-one basis. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to be able to talk to us and for us to deeply hear you in terms of how you want us to cover the changing environmental movement and what we can do as a media organization to deliver on our mission. What's clear is in this moment, we need more leaders. We need more leaders like you. We need this community involved to make this happen. So at our $100 level and our $50 level, whenever I run a fundraising event like this, I shoot for 100% participation so that when we're upstairs drinking our bubbly drinks a little bit later, we can all look each other in the eye knowing that we all said yes in this moment to support Bay Nature. So I'd love for us to get there. So at the $100 level, I mentioned our incredible board earlier. Our incredible board has matched or has provided funds to match up to $1,000 of donors at the $100 level. So if you give at the $100 level, you'll effectively be doubling that impact through the generosity of our board. So if you're able to give at the $100 level, I'd love to see your panels to help us finish strong. Can you help us at the $100 level and double that impact? Wow. Thank you, you guys. Thank you. Hold them high. We'll make sure we get them all. 115, 135, 26, 83, 116, 30. Number 1, I love that number 1 is represented. Outstanding. Thank you. All right, so last opportunity, $50, and this one's actually kind of my personal favorite, because $50, you think to yourself, what can $50 do? All these people are getting all this money, I want $50, all right, fine. Here's the deal. If you need any further evidence that Bay Nature takes your money seriously and protects it and stewards it and is a scrappy, no-nonsense nonprofit, and I'm not going to make eye contact with anyone on the staff right now, you need look no further than Bay Nature's printers, okay? These printers, nothing is older in our office, except perhaps the microwave, than our printers. And we cajole these things, we whisper to them, we kind of give them little nudges, and they have not failed us yet. They have not. Everything that you see printed for this show, those printers produce, so I will not speak ill of them. But it would be lovely, and our staff would feel lovely if we might be able to set those printers off to pasture in the not too distant future. So, if you're able to support us at the $50 level today, and we can get 20 donors at $50, we will replace those printers, okay? So I want you to know that you will have very real impact this afternoon at the $50 level. And furthermore, we will affix a plaque on the new printer with your name on it, attesting to the fact that you did this today in 2023. So, can you help us in a very deep and meaningful way at the $50 level this afternoon? I would love to see your paddles. Our staff would love to see your paddles at the $50 level for new printers for the Bay Nature staff. Unbelievable. You guys, you have no idea. You have no idea. I stand before you to say thank you for your support. Thank you for making Bay Nature strong. We really appreciate your help. And now it is my great pleasure to return us to our program and introduce you to a former board member at Land Paths, Susan Shaw, who's going to introduce our next honoree, Omar Gallardo. Susan.
Thank you, everyone. Alexii and Blanca, you were so inspiring, and all of you have been so inspiring this afternoon. I'm honored to be here with all of you and to introduce you to Omar Gallardo. And thank you for honoring Omar with this award today. It's an honor to introduce you to him. He's been a colleague and a friend of mine for 17 years and is a widely and deeply, I love this drawing of him, deeply respected leader. He does work that is unseen and is one of the people that many of us depend on to create the change we need towards the natural world and justice. And so many of us consider ourselves blessed by Omar. I served on the board of directors of Land Paths for 4 years, and as you know, Land Paths is an incredible organization doing great, great work. One of the reasons is because of Omar. Omar leads with love. As a child, Omar was in the fields with his parents, and instilled a love of land, a love of the land, and the need for deep respect and care for the land, her people, culture, and language. He grew up during his early years in land that belonged to his community. It was shared community land in Mexico, and those lands are called ejidos. His father was an ejido leader. When his family brought him to Sonoma County, he worked alongside his parents in the fields, and in between, he went to school. And from that school in Geyserville began dancing. And he is a recognized leader across the state in danza to this day. Omar came to Land Paz over 11 years ago from 15 years of working in migrant ed, in counseling young people and their families who were struggling with drug addiction and drug use, and then with day laborers from Mexico and Central America in Grayton, California. He began at Land Paz overseeing Bear Farm, which is an urban farm in the center of Santa Rosa, and he became the new audiences manager at Land Paz. He has brought hundreds and hundreds of families and young people to the beautiful lands and parks of Sonoma County. And in backpacking trips, canoe trips, events, treks, day hikes, stewardship, and on family outings to places as far away as Yosemite. In these places, he witnessed the power of the land to make belonging and to transform individuals, families, and communities' relationship to the land that is all around them. When he was counseling youth in Watsonville, he led a group of young people involved in gangs on a 5-day trek from Saratoga to Santa Cruz, and he witnessed how this changed them. So now, from migrant education to Vamos Afuera and Inspired Forward, it has been and it is all about getting kids and their families outside. Along the way, Omar listened, and he listened for knowledge and skill that lived in the people he was inviting into participation, listening for the values of respect and the desire to invest in and protect our earth. He listened to people offering their values and knowledge, and he valued what they had to say. His goal and Land Paz mission are to connect people to land, people who will know the land, who will recognize it, and who will care for it in the future. Like all of you. Omar said, and I quote, "Land Paz is a leader and trailblazer locally and nationally for our pursuit of equity and inclusion as core to our mission. We minimize or eliminate the experience of not feeling included or even unwelcomed to participate in conservation, stewardship, and exploration of the natural world." Land Paz took a risk when they began working with the community in Roseland to create a farm in the middle of an urban neighborhood. But it has become a place of connection to land and opened the path for getting out into wild, open spaces for so many families. As Omar said, it is via listening, hearing what people want, and engaging them in the solutions that they need. And one last thing. Omar, inside of Land Paz, has helped to transform the organization by diversifying staff and the board of directors, by expanding the goals of Land Paz to include inclusion and equity, and to figuring out what that means exactly, and what needs to happen to foster love of land for everyone. Omar's genius is acting with love and care to create a broad path of connection and belonging outside. So please join me in listening to Omar on this video. Thank you.
Don't worry, we got
I
it.
can take a picture of Omar with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good afternoon, and just want to apologize for not being there today. I really want to appreciate everybody that thought of me for this as a recipient of this honor, and I just want to thank you all for thinking of me. And it might have been I think I know who it was that put my name forward, and I really want to appreciate whoever it was. I'm thinking it might have been Craig Anderson. And everybody at Bay Nature for the consideration and also just the support throughout the years that I've been at Land Paths. I came to work with Land Paths. I think I was able to get the opportunity to actually do a lot of, put into practice a lot of the teachings from my father, from my mom, just being outside and living off the land. And, there's that sacrosanctity that of the land that they instilled in me, and I really appreciate that opportunity to, work with families, trying to get families onto the land, take care of the land that we have around us. And my children, my family, my wife, all of my relatives have bought kayaks now and everything, and so it just, it's very contagious, and so the reward, the honors go along with that. It's just the cherry on top. I like hokoke, which is like a type of sour cream, so not necessarily just a cherry on top. So it's the hokoke on top. I'm really appreciative, and I'm appreciative of Land Paths. I know Craig always really is always out there trying to get us trying to make things happen on the financial side, and everybody on the staff and the administrative piece of it, always kind of putting up with all kinds of things. And the managers, my co-managers are just they're awesome, and so I just couldn't think of a better organization to be part of in order to make these things happen. So the recognition is not just mine, but it's the community that I work with, and it's the community that has to put up with me. So sometimes challenging them and being the grumpy uncle. One of the highlights that I've had throughout my all this work with Land Paths has really been to work with youth, with teenagers. One of the stories that stand out is youth coming out from a very, from an alternative school in the center of the Dry Creek Valley. Children of farm workers, and them coming to a farm in the middle of the valley, one of the richest valleys in the world. In terms of not just the soil, the climate, and whatnot, they get to participate. They get to, with the support of, the family that hosted us there, Lou Preston and his family. We got to go on to the farm, and the youth actually got to go out and pick some of the vegetables that we cooked with. And as we asked them, what they had enjoyed that day, was they said picking Brussels sprouts. It really caught me by surprise. But these youth actually really telling me that going out and picking Brussels sprouts and cooking them and then eventually eating them meant a lot to them. They actually got to do that in that place. They did something that at first they might have been a little doubtful whether they were going to get into it. It was a gloomy day, damp, cold, but then eventually they went back, speaking of stories of Brussels sprouts and whatnot. That was a really memorable moment for them, and it became a memorable moment for me. Children that have never had that opportunity to do so, the same way with their families, not having having not had the opportunity to get outside and explore these places and feel that those places are theirs. These are communal spaces, and then learning how to protect these places. as they say, as we say sometimes, people don't do, we can always expect people to make decisions based on just being morally right, but sometimes we have to push a little harder to have people understand and invest and really value what communities and investing in communities that have been neglected. Bay Nature has actually been a huge part in highlighting some of those experiences. I think I've always said that it's been really hard to do community organizing or work with families whose children are impacted by substance abuse, or in my past, working with immigrant communities or trying to defend day laborers in Arizona. It's been hard, but it's been harder even to ask families to come out and join us on a Sunday after they worked picking grapes for 6 days. We've been out in the fields, but yet when you have them come out with you and trust you and go back, knowing that they can come back and knowing that they can trust the organization that you work with and the work that you've been investing into not just the community but their family is very rewarding. There is a responsibility with it, just for me at least, to always try to do more, because it sets a baseline, I guess. But I just want to believe that this is it's just recognition of something that we needed to do, and I'm really appreciative again of everything that the Bay Nature has actually done in order to highlight those moments, being there for those moments, and then those. And not just myself, but other folks, everybody else that has been honored, that is being honored today. Wishing everybody well and keeping the fight going in order to get people outside. Sometimes it might be just an outing for some people, but it means a lot. We numbers on paper can explain the impact once people come out, and then they start doing your work. They start sharing the love for the land, and I think that's in essence what my job has been, and it's been very rewarding that way when participants become those best ambassadors for yourself and for the organization and for the planet. So it's awesome. This award, usually I have a it's with my buddy, we kind of joke about sometimes being acknowledged. For us, I think it's always a reminder that you can always do better. It's an honor, but for me, I think it's just always a reminder that there's more to do, and there's always people there as well that are there with you, and we can advance all our goals together for the well-being of our community, the children, the families. Thank you.
Should we turn the lights on? Thanks. Y'all ready for some science? People call Stu Weiss the monarch whisperer, but when I met him, he said he was in a coevolutionary relationship with the bay checker spot butterfly, which he has studied for 4 decades. It nourishes him, he nourishes it, meaning on his side. It gives him hard problems to solve, and hard problems are what he likes. Stu first started chasing butterflies as a Stanford undergrad, but in 1984, he had an aha moment. He saw how the slope of a hill, the angle of a hill, determined exactly how much sunshine the checker spot larvae would get. You could measure that topographic complexity. You could predict it. You could design for it. People take that idea as gospel now. Like we all know about microclimates. Stu's paper planted that seed. In the 90s, Stu had another aha. He realized that nitrogen spewed into the air by cars and power plants was changing California. It fertilized invasive weeds, which choked out the checker spot's host plants. Cattle grazing could keep those weeds down. Non-native species could, in this case, help the native ones. That is when Stu dove into on-the-ground conservation. He He learned to work with those who are not necessarily traditional conservation allies, like power plant companies or ranchers, to get land protected. His research helped establish the legal precedent that if you're gonna spew nitrogen into the air, you have to pay to mitigate it, which in turn led to a $500 million more habitat plan for Santa Clara County, which is Checker Spot Central. So since 2006, Stu has been the science advisor to the Conservation Lands Network, which synthesizes umpteen layers of geographic data to help Bay Area land managers prioritize. It's a powerful tool, and now Stu's working on a CLN 3.0 to incorporate stewardship needs. He's clearly not done with the hard problems, and we are all better off for that. On behalf of Bay Nature, I'd like to present the 2023 Conservation Action Award to Stu Weiss.
Okay, so now I know the origin of all the recent Jerry Garcia sightings in the Bay Area. Okay, so I had a free-range childhood in a leafy green suburb of Philadelphia. My dad was an anti-war organizer, so I kind of got the activist genes and environment. And he also would take us to this place, the Wissahickon, and he blew my mind when I was 9 years old talking about this self-regenerating forest. I was just like, whoa, you mean like people don't have to do anything? And then I was 10 years old on the first Earth Day, and that kind of set my path. So I found myself at Stanford University in this field of wildflowers on Jasper Ridge Biological Reserve. And I had my first encounter with the Bay checker spot butterfly. And I learned about the most important plant in the world, the dwarf plantain, the silvery plant in the foreground, which is the only plant the Bay checker spot would feed on. And I owe it all to Dr. Paul Ehrlich, here being reunited with the Bay checker spot after several decades of not seeing them. He put up with me for 20 years in various roles working in his lab. That included a dream job as a field assistant in the Colorado Rockies. And in his path-breaking book, Extinction, published in 1981, he recounted my experience getting bulldozed off a site in Woodside while I was collecting checker spots for a genetics sample. And that was confronting the extinction crisis, the paving over of habitats and, just wiping out species. So a little about that time, I learned about the proposal to put a golf course in here at Edgewood Park. And they can't do that. And a lot of other people felt the same way, so the Save Edgewood Park Coalition was formed. Took over a decade to secure the park against this golf course, and then this organization morphed into the Friends of Edgewood, which is like the most amazing Friends organization devoted to a beautiful piece of land. My other undergraduate major was Stanford Band, and somehow I got in line of the camera here. That's me with the saxophone there. And that was the end, that was the end of my band career there. I took that crazy energy, which, you have in your 20s, and put it into whitewater rafting, which, teaches a lot of life lessons. Listen to the river, dodge the rocks and holes, and work with the current, not against it. Wait for your chance to make your move and don't struggle too far, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of life lessons in the most beautiful places on the planet for about 20 years. Really hardcore doing that. In 1984, started working down in the mother lode population of bay checker spot butterflies in serpentine grasslands down in South San Jose, now known as Coyote Ridge. Spent a lot of time tracking these checker spot larvae as they munched tender baby Plantago erecta greens and curled up in the sun to raise their body temperatures and digest their food. So, you know, they're fuzzy, warm, and very hungry caterpillars. That's what we found out. And I adopted some of that California lifestyle. Instead of Plantago erecta, I've got a Sierra Nevada pale ale there and a different thermoregulatory strategy. And, you know, this whole idea that the way the sun falls on the landscape is utterly predictable from geometry. And that led to my paper, Sun Slope and Butterflies. It's become a bit of a citation classic in the field and introduced a lot of people to the term topoclimate and phenology, which are now widely used in ecology and conservation to become a basis for climate change research. And I got to spend years like wandering around in these places, you know, enjoying the coefficient of beauty with all the wildflowers and sharing it with a nice herd of tule elk lording over Silicon Valley. They came back from the brink of extinction. And, you know, encountered the cows, and we quickly found out that the cows were like the keystone species out there. That without the cows, this beautiful field of wildflowers would turn into a sea of Italian ryegrass. We knew that in the 1980s, but we didn't know why. Then I was when I went back to grad school, I was in the ecosystem ecology course with Peter Vitusik, and he gave a lecture about dry nitrogen deposition. I mean, sure, smog is nitrogen fertilizer. And I'm like, aha, there it is. You know, the light bulb goes off in my head. Next thing I knew, like the whole Las Vegas Strip was going off because of such a revelation. So I published a paper in 1999. That became the best available science that was applied to mitigation for this gas-fired power plant, the Metcalf Energy Center. That set a precedent. Then when Highway 101 the following year was being widened, part of the mitigation was a commitment to develop a HCP, a habitat conservation plan. So then we got really busy advocating. So we put out this color glossy brochure with the California Native Plant Society, distributed a few thousand of them over the years. We started taking people up there. We invited all the elected officials up there, wildlife agency, a lot of the public, a docent program got started. We called it Operation Flower Power. And it's, you know, literal grassroots lobbying here. And we blew people's mind because they had no idea that was up there. Great media coverage. It got a half page in the Washington Post in 2006. And then when push came to shove, when we had to get the final approval of the elected bodies, we formed a coalition called Habitat Conservation Now. One of the activities was sending hundreds of these postcards to the elected officials saying, support the HCP. And then on October 3rd, 2013, the implementing agreement was signed, giving birth to the Santa Clara Valley Habitat Plan. So this paper, you know, interesting science, ended up generating about $700 million of mitigation. And the checker spot has become sort of a poster child for nitrogen deposition impacts on biodiversity, but there's a lot more to do. Got to get this out of just Santa Clara County. Another fallout of this was a recognition that the ranching community and the conservation community had more in common than they had differences. So the California Rangeland Conservation Coalition used this work as a basis for, this new paradigm about working lands. Then here back at Edgewood, kind of ended up being the same old song here, that the checker spot population there went extinct in 2002. And it was obvious on the ground that the habitat had gotten taken over by the Italian ryegrass. And it turns out that it was the fumigation by ammonia coming out of the cars going by on 280 at high speeds that was the key fertilization. And I call that the drive-by extinction. We've probably all made our contributions there. So we, worked to manage the habitat, reintroduce the bay checker spot butterfly to great fanfare in 2007. Here's a press gaggle. It was, just Friends of Edgewood just, worked it out just great. And we dominated the news cycle. We were on every TV station and a lot of print articles. But turns out it didn't work that first time. So we went back and did it again, and now we have a small population that's hanging on. We're waiting for that boom year to occur. So it's still in progress. Then in 2006, I got a phone call from Ann Buell of the Coastal Conservancy asking me, do you know anybody who could be the science advisor to the Upland Habitat Goals project we've been talking about? And, well, I could do that. And that led to the Conservation Lands Network, which, it's like a compilation, a meticulous compilation of the biogeography of the Bay Area, the conservation geography of the Bay Area, and trying to set a vision for what a truly effective conservation lands network would be. And it's been through 3 iterations, and we're going for the 4th one. So we did the math. We got 30 by 20 in the Bay Area, so we're way ahead of people. And we're en route to an ultimate goal, or even an interim of 50 by 50. I owe so much to my Creekside staff, Crystal, Jimmy, Marissa, and Chris, and there they are hard at work. Counting wildflowers. We do have, our corporate motto is sure beats working, which SBW happens to be my initials, so. Some of the species we're working with here, the Metcalf Canyon jewel flower, Tiburon paintbrush. We saved the San Mateo thorn mint in the upper right from extinction through intervention, Presidio clarkia, white-rayed pentakita, and then we're like all into lupins these days because it's the host plant for the endangered mission blue butterfly, which we've been working with other agencies to introduce and augment populations. Work with the Kino checker spot in Southern California. And then I've been working with monarch butterflies for a few decades now, and we're at the point where we can do designer overwintering habitat to create those right microclimates and not leave it to chance anymore. The topo climate work got me, and climate change work got me out in the Great Basin with the ancient bristlecone pines. And, I want to deeply thank my wife, Lisi. We met at a conservation biology reception at San Francisco State. About a month later, we decided that we had fallen in love at the Grateful Dead New Year's show. and here she is last weekend celebrating my 62nd birthday at Greens. And I owe a huge amount to my older brother. We recruited him to run our GIS system at Stanford. And he had come from an archaeology and a computer engineering background. And when asked whether, so why should we hire you? You do archaeology. He said, oh, no problem. The verbs are the same, but the nouns are different. And, tragically, we lost him to mental illness a few years ago. My errant moment got memorialized in bronze just up the hill here. But, the more deliberate legacy is this living legacy of biodiversity. And to have been the catalyst that led all of these organizations to, put the resources into conserving this incredible place on Coyote Ridge. And this is the way conservation is going these days. It's these big, multi-agency efforts. So let's share a little bit of love with the Bay checker spot butterflies here doing their thing. It's nurtured me. I've been nurturing it. And maybe we can raise our net in celebration of some success. But kind of like the true heroes on Iwo Jima that this photograph is referencing, it was only the beginning of the end of the beginning. It was not the end of the battle, and we have so much more work to do. So please, let's all keep doing it and amp up our efforts. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Stu. And thank you so much to all of the other heroes, Blanca, Omar, and Alexii. One of the things that I love, I'm Rebecca. Hi, I'm the board chair, the proud board chair of Bay Nature. And one of the things that I love most about Bay Nature is the community that it brings together, like all of us here, right? That we get to be all together in this space today, but we also get to be together when we, hold the magazine in our hands, when we read a story online, when we see an Instagram from Bay Nature or something on Twitter. Like, we're all connected by those stories. And I'm just really proud to be a part of that and really grateful for all the support that you all give to that effort, whether it's financially or by contributing to the stories or just doing the great work that protects people and nature and preserves people and nature, well, nature for people in the Bay Area. So thank you so much for all of the work that you do to make Bay Nature possible, and then for making Bay Nature possible by not only doing that work, but by supporting Bay Nature financially. Okay, so thank you again for this amazing day. I have one last thing to ask of you. We're gonna try to take a group picture all together. So our awesome photographer, we're gonna take it facing this way. So you all don't have to move, you just probably have to stand up. And I want all the board members, staff, and local heroes to come here. Everyone else stand up. I think that's the only way to be able to see everyone. And it's gonna be like a selfie, right? Except with a real camera. So we're all gonna turn our backs to you, so we're all gonna be looking at this screen, okay? Is that gonna work? What would be better for the light? More, just way more light? Can we also just get all the lights up, like as many lights as possible, Garrett? That would be awesome.